At the Crease with Kieran Powell. Cricket fans in Sri Lanka, in the Caribbean and all over the world. This is At the Crease with West Indies international cricketer Kieran Powell. For the first time in the Test series, West Indies have stabbed their authority by dismissing Sri Lanka for 204 runs in their first innings. In response, at the close of play, Windies were 69 runs for the loss of 1 wicket. As usual, I've got two very special guests on our show today, West Indies international cricketer Kieran Powell, and of course, I've got Vindana Prasad Karunaratne from the Newsfirst team. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining us today. Kieran, yesterday we spoke about West Indies should dismiss Sri Lanka between 200 to 250 runs. Not only they dismissed Sri Lanka for 204 runs, they also reduced that deficit by 69 runs at the close of play. Can we comfortably say that West Indies are in the driving seat today?
West Indies are definitely in the driving seat, but one thing we've seen throughout the course of this match and the course of this series is that the game changes very quickly. So the West Indies will know that they have to capitalize on this position, not having won a match in Sri Lanka in the history of the West Indies playing Test cricket in Sri Lanka. The West Indies will try and bat the entirety of tomorrow, get as many runs on the board as possible, try and get into day 4 as well and bat some of day 4 and give themselves the best chance, if they have to bat again in the second innings, not have to chase too many runs or try and beat Sri Lanka 2 innings tomorrow.
During the pitch report, Farvis Maharoof said that this particular pitch, even though it's a day 2 pitch, it will play as a day 3 pitch. Is it bad batting from Sri Lanka, or was it a bad bowling or good bowling from West Indies side?
I think it was a combination of both. The pitch, from all reports, is very dry, very dusty. From some of the reports I've gotten from people back in the Caribbean as well, they've condemned the nature of the pitch. It's a bit too dry. It's doing a bit too much, too early in the game. This is only day 2, but the ball was spinning quite sharply, like an end of day 3, early day 4 type wicket. But having said that, that's the cards that both teams have been dealt, so they have to play their hands now. The West Indies will be quite happy collecting 10 wickets for 98 runs. Sri Lanka, on the other hand, will be very disappointed in having their 5th 100-run opening partnership consecutively and then being dismissed for only 204. So both teams had good points. The West Indies definitely having the stronger day, and they'll be looking to extend that into the rest of the match.
The dismissal of Dimuth Karunaratne yesterday when Sri Lanka were 113 runs for the loss of 1 wicket yesterday. How crucial was that dismissal yesterday, the catch that Roshan Chase took? Well,
that seems to be the key wicket throughout the series. And Kruma Banner in the pre-match interview said that the West Indies will stress on getting Dimuth Karunaratne out. Now, in the context of things, he still got 42 runs. But for the West Indies, that's a big plus. If you can open up one end and have the main batter, the main anchor for Sri Lanka dismissed, then that gives you a wide open playing field. It was also to the West Indies' advantage as well that Angelo Matthews got injured. So that when Sri Lanka would have had a senior batter who could have anchored the innings and put some new direction towards, all right, we need to rein it back, readjust our targets, I'll use my experience to get us to a target that is safe. That person was missing, and the bowlers in Versamy Pramal and Jamal Warrikan wreaked havoc today.
ශ්‍රී ලංකා කණ්ඩායම ගාලු ජාත්‍යන්තර පිටියේදී අර දඟපන්දු යවන්නන්ට උචිත තනතිරුවක් ප්‍රිපෙයාර් කරලා තිබ්බ. ඇත්තටම වින්දන අපිට ඒක බෑක්ෆයර් වුණාද අද තරගයේදී?
බොහෝ දුරට ඊ හවස මාටින් අපි දැක්කා දිමුත්ගේ කඩුල්ල බිඳ වැටෙන ආකාරය. පන්දුව මං එදා ඊයේ සඳහන් කළා තරමක ඉපිලීමක් දක්නට ලැබුණා කියලා මේ තනතිරු ඇතම් ස්ථානවල වැදුනහම පිටිකරුවට තරමක් අනපේක්ෂිත විදිහට තමන් වෙත එන ගතියක් අපි දැක්කා. ඒ ප්‍රතිඵලයක් හැටියට තමයි දිමුත් තමාගේ එල්ල කරන පහර උඩ පන්දුවක් හැටියට නැවත ප්‍රතිපෙරලා රැක ගන්නට අවස්ථාවක් උදා වෙන්නේ. ඒ අවස්ථාවම තමයි අද අපේ බිඳ වැටුණු කඩළු අතර අපි දැක්කේ ක්‍රීඩකින් පහරවල් එල්ල කරන්නට උත්සාහ කරන. නමුත් ක්‍රීඩා පිටිය තුල දඟපන්දු යවන්නන් හැටියට ඉතාමත්ම හොඳින් පෙරුමාල් ඒ වගේම වොරිකන් ඉතාමත්ම හොඳ දඟ කැවීමක් එක්ක ශ්‍රී ලංකා ප්‍රතිකරුවන්ට පීඩනයක් ගෙන දුන්නා. ඔවුන් පහරවල් වලට යන්නට උත්සාහ කළා. නමුත් ප්‍රතිඵලය බවට පත් වුණේ පන්දුවේ නව ගතියත් එක්ක අපි දැකපු ප්‍රධානතම කරුණ තමයි ක්‍රීඩකින්ට මේ ප්‍රධානත වශයෙන්ම අපිට දක්න ලැබෙන්නේ කොතරම් දුරට පන්දුව ක්‍රීඩකයාගෙන් එළියට කැපෙනවද. අපි සාමාන්‍ය වචනින් කතා කරොත් පිටිකරුවා සාමාන්‍යයෙන් බලාපොරොත්තු වන මට්ටමට පිත්ත සහ පාදය ගෙනාවට අපි දකින්නේ නැහැ ඔහු බලාපොරොත්තු වන සීමාවට එහා ගිහිලා තමයි කරුණ රකින්න ක්‍රීඩකයා ජොෂුවා පන්දුව රැකගන්නේ. ඉතින් මේ ප්‍රතිඵලය එහෙම නැත්නම් මේ දඟපන්දු යවන්නන්ට උචිත තනතිරුවෙන් අද දිනේදී කොදෙව් කණ්ඩායමේ පන්දු යවන්නන් යහපත් ප්‍රතිඵල නෙලා ගත්තා. එහි පීඩනය ශ්‍රී ලංකා කණ්ඩායමට ලැබෙන්නේ. ලකුණු 69ක් තුල කඩලු 9ක් ශ්‍රී ලංකා කණ්ඩායමේ බිඳ වැටෙනවා. දෙවන කඩුල ක්‍රීඩාපිටින් ඉවත් වීමත් එක්ක ලකුණු 139 දී දෙවන කඩුල බිඳ වැටෙනවා. ශ්‍රී ලංකා ඉනිම සමස්තයක් හැටියට ලකුණු 204කදී නිමාවටපත් වෙනවා. මේක තමයි අපි දැක්කේ සමස්තයක් හැටියට ශ්‍රී ලංකා කණ්ඩායමේ පිටිකරුවන්ට මේ දඟපන්දු යවන්නන්ගේ අභියෝගයට සාර්ථකව මුහුණ දෙන්නට හැකියාවක් ලැබුණේ නැහැ.
இன்று மேற்கிந்திய தீவுகள் மற்றும் இலங்கை அணிகளுக்கு இடையிலான இரண்டாவது டெஸ்ட் கிரிக்கெட் போட்டியின் இரண்டாம் நாள் ஆட்ட முடிவின் போது மேற்கிந்திய தீவுகள் அணி 69 ஓட்டங்களை பெற்றுள்ளது, ஒரு விக்கெட் இழப்பிற்கு. இலங்கை அணி முன்னதாக 204 ஓட்டங்களை பெற்றிருந்தது தங்களது முதலாவது இன்னிங்ஸில். விந்தன கூறியது போல இலங்கை அணிக்கு மேற்கிந்திய தீவுகள் அணியின் சுழல் பந்து வீச்சாளர்களின் அந்த சேலஞ்சை எதிர்நோக்க முடியவில்லை என்று தான் விந்தன் பிரசாத் கருணாரத்ன இப்பொழுது எமக்கு தெரிவித்தார். அது மட்டுமில்லாமல் கைரன் பவல் நேற்றைய நாள் ஆட்ட முடியும் போது எமக்கு தெரிவித்தார், மேற்கிந்திய தீவுகள் அணி இலங்கை அணியை 200 மற்றும் 250 ஓட்டங்களுக்கு நடுவில் டிஸ்மிஸ் பண்ண முடியும் என்றால் மேற்கிந்திய தீவுகள் அணி டிரைவிங் சீட்டில் இருக்க முடியும் என்று தான் Kieran Powell said. Can we call you a prophet, since everything whatever that you're telling is making happening?
Well, the years of playing the game, I wouldn't say it's inside information, but just looking at the pitch, understanding conditions, understanding what's being presented in these conditions and what the players have to work with, you could sort of forecast as a player what's going to happen throughout the course of a game. So I will take the title of a prophet, but don't come to me for too many things outside of cricket.
While looking at the wickets that fell today, Kieran, Veerasamy Permaul yesterday, I was so much against the inclusion of Veerasamy Permaul yesterday because I liked Rakeem Cornwall's batting most of the time. But yesterday he proved me wrong. Did he prove most of the fans in Sri Lanka and most of the people in the Caribbean as well?
Well, personally, this Veerasamy Permaul is a guy I've known from since I've been 12 years old. We've played every level of cricket together. He's someone that I'm very close with. Very good bowler. He's got 550 almost first-class wickets. He's only 32 years of age. I think that he should have been given an opportunity before this. Having said that, he's gotten his opportunity today. He's proved, I guess, the doubters, the wider people that aren't as familiar with him wrong. But this is something that he's been doing for years and years at domestic level. Fortunately for him, he got an opportunity today. I thought that he should have played in the first test match as well, but he's got his opportunity and he's taken it with both hands.
We saw in the first match, West Indies went ahead with Rakeem Cornwall and Jamal Warrican, and Rakeem Cornwall was left out from this 11. We cannot take anything away from the way that Jamal Warrican bowled as well.
Yeah, so what we saw today was actually very special because both bowlers picked up their career best figures in Test cricket. They utilized the conditions that were on offer to them. As the pitch report suggested, there was a bit of rough, but when the ball pitched today, you saw a bit of disturbance in the pitch. You saw lots of puff of smoke. That means that the surface is completely gone, the top surface. So you're getting puffs of dust coming up from the pitch, which means that when the spinners bowl with a bit of extra pace on the pitch, because it's a slow pitch, the ball's going to spin and it's going to spin quickly, which makes it hard for batters to adjust to the balls that the bowlers are bowling. So if you're playing now for the balls to spin very quickly and one keeps straight, the LBW, which happened to Pathum Nissanka, is going to be very much a chance. But also, the balls that got players not being able to adjust because it spun so sharply were massive wicket-taking balls today, as we saw as well.
We saw during the previous match analysis as well, you said we should be able to, if the batters are to succeed, they should be able to, negate that ball that would come directly into the stump. Anything that goes away, they can leave out. That's exactly what happened. That was exactly the downfall of the Sri Lankan batters as well today.
Yeah, I think, as I said, both bowlers bowled well in partnership.
Yeah.
If you look at what happened, the bowlers are pitching the balls in that 6 to 8 meter mark, which is quite difficult for the batters to get to because they're not very tall players, the Sri Lankans. And then, because the ball was doing that much that quickly, it was very difficult with the pace that Veerasamy Permaul in particular was bowling for the batters to handle any slight shift off of the pitch. So Permaul had a very good pace for the wicket, which is as important as bowling the ball in the right spot.
වින්දන අපි සඳහන් කරා ඊයේ තරගයේදී ඇවිල්ලා ශ්‍රී ලංකා කණ්ඩායම ඉතාම හොඳින්ම පන්දුවට පාර දෙන්න අවශ්‍යයි කියලා අද තරගයේ ජයග්‍රහණය කරගන්න. ඔබ කිව්වා දඟපන්දු යවන්නන්ගේ චැලෙන්ජ් එකට මුහුණ දෙන්න බැරි වුණා කියලා ඇත්තටම. ඇත්තටම සඳහන් කරොත් එimhe වෙස්ට් ඉන්ඩීස් කණ්ඩායම හොඳට බැට් කරා ඒගොල්ලන්ගේ පළවෙනි ඉනිමේ ලකුණු 69ක් ලබා ගිහලා තියෙනවා විකට් එකකට. අපි ශ්‍රී ලංකා කණ්ඩායම 204යි රැස් කරේ අද දිනේදී.
ඔව් මම හිතන්නේ අර දෙවන කඩුල්ල බිඳ වැටීම සහ පෙරුමාල්ගේ සුවිශේෂී දඟ කැවීම ඔබ දකිනවා ඇති මේ ප්‍රතිරූපණවලදී කයිරන් සඳහන් කරන ආකාරයට මේ ක්‍රීඩා පිටියේ තනතිරුව ඉදිරියට වැටෙන පන්දුව ඔවුන් බලාපොරොත්තු වනවාට වඩා ධනංජය කිසිසේත්ම ඔහු බලාපොරොත්තු වෙන විදිහට නෙමෙයි ඔහුගේ පිත්තේ පන්දුව දැවටිලා ජොෂුවා කඩුල්ල වෙනුවෙන් උඩ පන්දුව රැකගන්නේ. ඉතින් ඉන් අනතුරු අපි දැකපු අනිත් සුවිශේෂීම කාරණාව තමයි තියුණු දඟ කැවීමක්. ක්‍රීඩකීන් සාමාන්‍යයෙන් පන්දුවක් වැටෙන ලයින් එක ගුඩ් ලයින් හෝ ලයින් ඇන්ඩ් ලෙන්ත් එක අනුව පිටිකරුවෙක් Tamanගේ පහර ගහන්නට ඕනේ කොමන ආකාරයෙන්ද කියන එකේ පොඩි චිත්‍රයක් හිතේ තියෙනවා. නමුත් ඔවුන් බලාපොරොත්තු නොවන ආකාරයට පන්දුව ක්‍රීඩා පිටියේ දඟ කැවෙන ආකාරයක් අපි සමස්තයක් හැටියට මේක තුල දකිනවා. ඊට අමතරව කොදෙව් කණ්ඩායම ඉතාමත්ම හොඳින් ලකුණු 69ක් ප්‍රධාන ලකුණු පොරට එකතු කරන්නේ එක් කඩුලක් පමණක් බිඳ වැටි. ඒට හේතුව බොහෝ දුරට මාටින් වෙන්නට පුළුවන් තවමත් නව පන්දුව සහ දඟ පන්දු යවන්නන් තව දුරටත් පන්දුව දඟ කවමින් එහෙම නැත්නම් පන්දුව පොඩ්ඩක් පරණ කරලා කඩුලක් දෙකක් දවා ගන්නට උත්සාහ කරන ආකාරයක් විශේෂයෙන්ම අපි දකින්නේ පෙරුමාල්ගේ දඟ කැවීම තරමක් සුවිශේෂී දඟ කැවීමක්. අපේ දඟ පන්දු යවන්නන්ට වඩා පන්දුව ඔහු දඟ කැවීමකට ලක් කරනවා. සාමාන්‍යයෙන් අපි දකිනවා අපේ පන්දු යවන්න විශේෂම රමේෂ් ඒ වගේම ප්‍රවීන් ඇතුළු ඇඹුල්දෙනිය ඇතුළු පන්දු යවන්නන් තරමක් දුරට පන්දුව කිලින් යොමු කරන ආකාරයක් තමයි වැඩිපුරම අපි දකින්නේ. ඒ හරහා LBW එකකට හරි එහෙම නැත්නම් උඩ පන්දුවක් රැක ගන්නට ගන්න උත්සාහය. නමුත් මේ දඟ කැවීම තරමක් ඊට එහා ගියපු දඟ කැවීමක් ක්‍රීඩකයාට සෙටල් වෙන්න දෙන්නේ නැහැ. එහෙම නැත්නම් නව ක්‍රීඩකෙක් ක්‍රීඩාංගණයට ආවම ඌට අපහසු පන්දුවක් දෙකක් යොමු කරාම ඔහු තරමක් මානසිකව තනතිරුවත් එක්ක ප්‍රශ්නයකට යොමු වෙනවා. මේ හරහා ඔවුන් ඉතාමත්ම හොඳ පන්දු යොමු කළා කඩුල දවා ගන්න ආකාරයක් තමයි අපි දැක්කේ.
Karan, during the first match, we can confidently say that Sri Lankan spinners had the upper hand over the West Indies spinners. But as the context of the game at this point of time, the West Indies spinners are ahead. Is it because of the pace in which that they bowled the deliveries was the difference between the Sri Lankan spinners and the West Indies spinners, which ended up West Indies having the upper hand during this test match?
There are lots of varying factors in it. The West Indies would have gotten to grips with the conditions, obviously not being from Sri Lanka, having played the first test match, having had a chance to assess, reassess, come with a different plan. Obviously they made changes in the bowling lineup as well. What surprised me as well is not just the amount of wickets that the West Indies were able to get in that session this morning, but the pace at which they got those wickets. Veerasamy Permaul collecting a 5-wicket haul. He's made in 5-wicket haul in Test cricket in just 11 overs. That's very quick for any bowler to get a 5-wicket haul. Jamel Warrikan also got 4 wickets in just 17 overs. So they didn't have to bowl very long spells, which means that they were always fresh. Every time a bowler gets a wicket, he's always reinvigorated to go again. He feels as though he's just started bowling. So that was something interesting. I think as the match goes on, the West Indies will have to be mindful of that. Batting last on a pitch like this, the West Indies as well will try and maximize the use of the heavy roller, try and flatten out that pitch, get that first hour, try and get as many runs as possible, and then settle in once the ball starts to do a bit more. So the West Indies will be looking to get anywhere from 250 upwards, trying to make Sri Lanka have to work very hard to get that deficit out and try and get a few wickets out of that as well, so that they can set themselves up to try and win the first ever test match in Sri Lanka for the Caribbean people. Sri Lanka now will be trying to get the West Indies out and hopefully have a collapse like what the West Indies were able to manufacture from Sri Lanka tomorrow morning. So it's going to be an interesting match.
The weather has been a nemesis for Sri Lanka now. During the first match, I can say West Indies lost most of their wickets during the last session of the play. But today the last session was washed out due to rain, and had the last session played, we could have been talking about Sri Lanka in the dominant position at this point of time. Agreed?
Could have been possible. We could have also been talking about the West Indies being 130 for 1 as well. So you never know what would have happened. But what has happened so far in the match it shows that it's very gripping cricket. You know, it's very eye-catching. You have to pay attention to every over, every ball, and the West Indies will be hoping that this continues to go in their favour. Sri Lanka, on the other hand, will be taking heart from what happened in terms of the wickets falling so quickly and them having to bowl first thing in the morning.
චරිත අසලංක ගැන අපි අතරම කතා කරා යෙදිනේදී කයිරන් අපිට සඳහන් කරා අපේ ඇනාලිසිස් එක ඉවර වෙලා චරිත අසලංකට බොහෝ දුරට බැට් කරන්න බැරි වෙයි කියලා ශ්‍රී ලංකා කණ්ඩායමේ මුල් පෙළ පිටිකරුවන් හිතාම හොඳින් ක්‍රීඩා කරයි කියලා. හැබැයි අද අවස්ථාවක් හම්බුණා චරිත අසලංකට. හැබැයි ඒකේ ප්‍රයෝජනය ගන්න බැරි වුණා චරිත අසලංක.
ඔව් කොහොමුණත් මාටින් අමතක කරන්න එපා. චරිත අසලංක තමාගේ පළමු එක්දින ජාත්‍යන්තර තරගයේ ලකුණු නොලබා ක්‍රීඩා පිටින් ඉවත් වන්නේ මගේ මතකයේ නිවැරදි නම් එංගලන්ත කණ්ඩායමට එරෙහිව. කොහොම නමුත් ක්‍රීඩකයෙකුගේ ආරම්භය සමස්ත අනාගතයේ තීරණය කරන කාරණාවක් නොවේ. අපි දැක්ක දිනේෂ් චන්දිමාල් පැතුම් නිස්සංක හොඳින් පන්දුර පහර දෙමින් සිටින අවස්ථාවක තමයි ඔහු කඩුලමුවා කිරීමේ වරදට හසුවන්නේ. ලැබෙන ආරංචි වලට අනුව ඇන්ජලෝ මැතිව්ස් ආබාධයකට ලක්ව තිබෙනවා ක්‍රීඩා පිටියේ පන්දුර පහර දෙමින් සිටින අවස්ථාවේ. ඔහුට තරගයේ තවදුරටත් ක්‍රීඩා කරන්න පුළුවන් වේද කියන එක පිළිබඳවත් ගැටලුවක් තිබෙනවා. සමස්තයක් හැටියට පැතුම් නිස්සංක පමණක් නොවේ. රමේෂ් මෙන්ඩිස් මේ වගේ පළමු ටෙස්ට් ක්‍රිකට් තරගය තුල කිසියම් විදිහකට ශ්‍රී ලංකා ඉනිම ශක්තිමත් කරන්න දායකත්වයක් දක්වපු පිටිකරුවන් සියල්ලකටම මුහුණ දෙන්නට වෙන ප්‍රතිඵලය සමානයි. ධනංජය ඩි සිල්වා ලකුණු 2යි ලබා ගන්න. ඔහු පළමු ඉනිමේදී වටිනා අර්ධ ශතකයක් ශ්‍රී ලංකා කණ්ඩායමට පළමු ඉනිමේදී ලබා දෙන්නට සමත් වුණා. ඉතින් මේ විදිහට ගත්තොත් මාටින් මං හිතන්නේ පිටිකරුවන් මේ දිනය තුලත් කඩලු 10ක් ක්‍රීඩා පිටියේ බිඳ වැටලා අවසන් සමස්තයක් හැටියට මේ විකට් එක තුල. ඉතින් අපි දකින්නේ ගාල්ල ජාත්‍යන්තර ක්‍රීඩාංගණය තුල අපි දකින සාමාන්‍ය තත්වය දඟපම්දිවන්නන් කෙරෙහි දක්වන වැඩි සහයෝගය සහ වැඩි නැඹුරුතාවය හරහා මම විශ්වාස කරන්නේ සහ අපි දකින්නේ මේක තරමක් පළමු තරගයට සාපේක්ෂව වැඩි දඟ කැවීමක් තිබෙන පිටිකරුවන්ට අපහසු පන්දුවන්නන්ට වැඩි ප්‍රයෝජනයක් ගන්න පුළුවන් තන තීරුවක්. අපි හෙට දිනේදී මේ තත්වය කොදෙව් කණ්ඩායමට කුමන ආකාරයකින් බලපායිද කියන එක පිළිබඳවත් යම්කිසි ඇනලයිසින් එකක් කරන්න ඕනේ. මොකද මේ එහෙම විග්‍රහයක් නැත්තම් මේක තරමක් දුරට අපහසුයි. අද දිනය තුල පමණක් රැඳුනොත් හෙට දිනේදී ශ්‍රී ලංකා කණ්ඩායමේ පන්දුවන්නනුත් කොදෙව්වන්ට අද දිනේදී අපිට ලැබිච්ච අභියෝගයම එල්ල කරන්නට බොහෝ දුරට ඉඩ තිබෙනවා.
We all know for a fact that West Indies dismissed Sri Lanka for 204 runs and there were 69 runs for the loss of 1 wicket. But the expectation as soon as Sri Lanka dismissed West Indies dismissed Sri Lanka for 204 runs, Sri Lanka's spinners are going to come all guns blazing and maybe at the end of the close play West Indies might have lost about 6 to 7 wickets. But the story is contrasting. What happened there actually?
Expectation is a funny thing because now these Sri Lankan spinners are actually bowling with pressure on them. They're not bowling with the freedom of having a big first innings score. So now they're coming and trying to manufacture wickets, trying to take wickets every ball, and that's leading to them bowling bad balls. It was very important that Jermaine Blackwood played the way that he did today. Be positive, go out, get as many as you can. Unfortunately for the West Indies, he got out that way, but that helped the West Indies to dig deep into the Sri Lanka lead. 60-odd runs, especially in just as little overs as the West Indies had to bat today, was very important in the context of the game and the pitch that this match is being played on. The West Indies now will be hoping, as I said, to use that heavy roller, try and get some assistance in terms of the ball not spinning as much because the pitch will be pressed, flattened out by the impact of that heavy roller, which generally lasts for an hour after it's been rolled, so that they can get through that first hour, batters get set, and Kruma Bonner showed that once he gets set in the last test match, he's very capable of playing high quality spin like what the Sri Lankans have and scoring runs as well. So the West Indies will take solace in that.
So talking about what Kieran Powell என்ன தெரிவித்தார்னு சொன்னா மேற்கிந்திய தீவுகள் அணி இலங்கை அணி 204 ஓட்டங்களுக்கு ஆட்டமில்லைன்றதுக்கு பிறகு மேற்கிந்திய தீவுகள் அணி ஹெவி ரோலரை வந்து பிச்சில் யூஸ் பண்ணனால மெனி சேஞ்சஸ் ஏற்படாது ஹெவி ரோலர் பிச்சை யூஸ் பண்ணா பிச் வந்து நார்மலாகவே ஒரு ஃப்ளட்டான பிச்சாக இருக்கும். இதில் லாஸ்ட் ஃபார் 1 hour ஒரு ஹவருக்கு மாதிரி இந்த பிச் வந்து ஒரு ஸ்டேபிளான ஒரு சிச்சுவேஷனில் இருக்கும். நாளைய நாளில் வெஸ்ட் இண்டீஸ் கிரிக்கெட் அணி வந்து பேட் பண்ணக்குள்ள ஒரு ஹவருக்குள்ளே பிச்சில் ஏதாவது டீமன்ஸ் ஏதாவது பிரச்சனைகள் இல்லாட்டி வெஸ்ட் இண்டீஸ் அணி ஒரு ஹவரில் ஃபார்ம் ஆகிடும். அதுக்கு பிறகு பேஸ்ட் ஆன் அவங்களோட பேட்டிங் படி அவங்க மூவ் ஆன் ஆகலாம் அப்படின்றது தான் கைரன் இப்போது தெரிவித்தார். ஸ்ரீலங்கா on the other hand, you said West Indies might have used the heavy roller just before the start of their batting. Do you think that Sri Lanka might have done the same thing as well, or did they use a light roller?
I'm not sure. We weren't privy to that. We didn't get to see that before the day's play. Maybe they would have used the light roller because things went to plan for them on day one. Batting was very easy. They were scoring at 3.3 runs and over. So there were no hassles, no headaches. The way that Dimuth Karunaratne got out as well was against the run of play. So the Sri Lankans would not have gone to bed thinking that there was anything untoward happening that they should be worried about going into day 2. Obviously, the game really speeded up a lot today, this morning, when the West Indies took the ball. The two spinners created a lot of pressure, and that's where everything starts from. Spinners bowling, dot balls, creating pressure, and then that leads to wickets. You get one wicket, you open up, and then they broke through. So Sri Lanka now will be going into tomorrow thinking, all right, guys, we tried to experiment, didn't work last night, that's fine. Let's start building pressure. We'll set a bit more defensive fields. Let's draw up the scoring, build some pressure, get an early wicket, and try and get into the West Indies batting.
One thing that I've noticed, particularly in the West Indies innings, is that Jermaine Blackwood was aggressive. Was the aggressor in that particular partnership with Craig Brathwaite batting on the other side. It took a lot of pressure from Brathwaite, I believe. Dismissal of Blackwood, how important that's going to be in the context of the game, and West Indies now trying to get the dominance further.
Of course, it's very important. The dismissal of any batter, any top order batter, any top line batter in international cricket is very important. But why Blackwood's is important is because the ball wasn't doing as much and he was able to score freely. As you said, Craig Brathwaite was the anchor on the other end of the pitch. So Blackwood being able to alleviate that pressure from Craig Brathwaite and for the West Indies team, knowing that they're eating into that lead that Sri Lanka has quickly. If he was still there at the end of close, Sri Lanka would have been a lot more worried than what they are going into day 2, but he would have said and felt happy in what he did today because he would have done his job basically.
අපි සඳහන් කර සිටිය වින්දන ඊයේ දිනේදී දිමුත් කරුණාරත්නගේ විකට් එකට පස්සේ ශ්‍රී ලංකා කණ්ඩායම ලකුණු 113ක් ලබාගෙන හිටියා ඊයේ තරඟයේ නිමා වෙන විට විකට් එකක අදත් ඇවිල්ලා බටහිර ඉන්දියාවේ කණ්ඩායම කියා සිටිනවා ලකුණු 69ක් ලබා දීලා තියෙනවා විකට් එකට ශ්‍රී ලංකා ක්‍රිකට් කණ්ඩායමට අත්වුණු දේ ඒට බටහිර ඉන්දියාවේ කණ්ඩායමට අත් වෙන්න පුළුවන්.
අනිවාර්යයෙන්ම මේ ක්‍රිකට් ක්‍රීඩාව තුළ අනාවැකි කියන්නට අමාරුයි. කොහොම වුණත් අපි දකිනවා විකට් එක බොහොම දඟපද්‍යවන්නට උචිත තනතිරුවක් තමයි තියෙන්නේ කියන එක ගැන. ඒ නිසා මාටින් අපි විශ්වාස කරනවා මේ තරඟය තුළ හෙට දිනේදී අද දිනේ ශ්‍රී ලංකා කණ්ඩායමට මුහුණ දෙන්නට සිදුවෙච්ච ඉරණම කොදෙව් කණ්ඩායමටත් නොවෙතයි අපිට බලාපොරොත්තු වන්නට බෑ. ශ්‍රී ලංකා කණ්ඩායම සතුවත් දඟපන්දු තිදෙනෙක් ඉන්නවා. ඉතාමත්ම සුවිශේෂී දඟපන්දු තිදෙනෙක්. හෙට දිනේදී ඔවුන් ක්‍රියාත්මක වුණොත් කොදෙව් කණ්ඩායමට වැඩි පීඩනයක් යොමු කරන්න ලකුණු ලබා නොදී අද දවසේදී අපි දැක්කේ නැහැ ඔවුන් නියමිත ඉලක්කයකට පන්දුව යොමු කරනවා. එහෙම නැත්නම් පිටිකරුවන් අපහසුතාවයට පත් කරන්න වැඩිපුර ලකුණු නොලබා ඉන්න අවස්ථාව උදා කරන ආකාරයේ පන්දුවීමක් අපි දැක්කේ නැහැ. කොදෙව් පිටිකරුවන් දෙදෙනා ඉක්මනින් ලකුණු අතරට ආවා. මේ තත්ත්වයේ වළක්වාගෙන උන්ට පීඩනයක් යොමු කළොත් බොහෝ දුරට හෙට දිනේදී කොදෙව් කණ්ඩායමේ කඩු ඉක්මනින් දවා ගන්නට ශ්‍රී ලංකා කණ්ඩායමට අවස්ථාවක් උදා වේවි මේ තනතිරුවත් එක්ක බැලුවාම.
කාරණට සිංහල තේරෙනවනේ.
චුට්ටක් සිංහල තේරෙනවා.
මම ඇත්තට මොනවද කිව්වේ දන්නවද වින්දනට?
I don't agree with his thoughts, but
What exactly Vindana was telling is that Dimuth Karunaratne, when West Indies dismissed Dimuth Karunaratne yesterday, we went into the closure of the day with 113 runs for the loss of 1 wicket, and we were so happy that Sri Lanka have extended the dominance in the second test match. And you are in the same seat as we were yesterday, scoring 69 runs for the loss of 1 wicket. You know, there's no guarantee that West Indies are going to reduce that deficit very fast tomorrow. West Indies could have the same thing happen to Sri Lanka yesterday.
exactly, it's a very dangerous position to be in because we know the nature of the pitch. We've seen what's happened throughout the course of the series. Everything that happens in terms of wickets falling, it happens very quickly. The first test match, the two Sri Lankan spinners, the Embledenia and Mendes, reaped havoc on the West Indies batters. Today, Permal and Warrikan did the same for the Sri Lankan batters. So we know it's not going to be easy. Batting throughout the rest of this match is not going to be easy for any team.
From the Sri Lankan contest, sorry to interrupt you, we have limited time there. Sri Lanka to dismiss, what's going to be the good score that Sri Lanka would be looking at dismissing West Indies tomorrow?
Well, the West Indies are already 69 for 1. Sri Lanka would try and keep the West Indies under 150. That would be ideal for them, having a 50-run lead on a pitch like this. That's the equivalent of having a 125-run lead.
Let's get the profit out. Do you think that Sri Lanka should be able to dismiss West Indies for 150 runs?
I think that the West Indies will get anywhere between 240 and 280 runs. The West Indies will add another 200 runs to their score.
So we look at 69 runs lead by West Indies by tomorrow's play. That's all I've got from the analysis on the second day of the second test between Sri Lanka and West Indies, with the expectation of bringing you an analysis of the third day's play of the second test between West Indies and Sri Lanka at the Galle International Cricket Stadium. It's goodbye from all of us here.